Hi everyone, and welcome to a special report from ROX Network. We're going to be talking about a topic that affects many music fans and musicians alike. Today we're talking about the condition known as tinnitus. If you don't know what tinnitus is, it's sounds that you can hear in your lug holes that aren't really there. We're going to be talking to an audiologist from the RNID who's going to explain to us what tinnitus is, what treatments are available, and how you can help avoid getting tinnitus or making it worse.
In the UK, 6 million people experience sounds for which there's no external source. These people have tinnitus. The symptoms of tinnitus are often described as ringing, buzzing, or whistling sounds that are perceived within the ears or the head. However, it's not the ear that's responsible. Instead, the causes for tinnitus can be found in the brain. The brain is made up of a huge number of active nerve areas which all have different roles. Sound information is processed via a very specific brain area known as the auditory cortex. The auditory cortex is divided up into areas that are responsible for processing different pitches, in a similar way in which keys would be arranged on a piano. Anything which causes us to lose our hearing can have the effect of disrupting this internal keyboard. This could be caused by medication, loud noises, or just the natural aging process. Due to this disruption, there's a reduction of activity in the keyboard areas affected by hearing loss, and the nerves that make up the area can start to fire spontaneously. This is called neural synchronization. Or to put it another way, if the ear no longer talks to the auditory centre, then the nerve cells in the auditory centre begin to chatter in an overactive and unregulated way. It's this abnormal overactivity which causes us to perceive the tinnitus signal. Over time, this abnormal activity becomes permanent. Modern imaging procedures enable us to see evidence of the abnormal neural synchrony within the auditory part of the brain. This abnormal neural synchrony doesn't remain limited to the auditory centre. Brainwave measurements have shown that brain areas regulating attention, emotions, and stress are also affected. The faulty signals in all these areas together allow the tinnitus tone to invade into our consciousness. This interaction of brain areas influences the individual level of distress and anxiety experienced by each person, as well as the perceived volume and invasiveness of the tinnitus.
Okay. Sorry, I've got a brain freeze.
That's all right. I'll have that several times a day.
Right, so, to start off, we tend to do a lot of musicians and things like that related to live music, and there's so little understood amongst musicians about hearing loss and tinnitus and the damage that can be done. So to sort of start off, can you tell us a bit about your work as an audiologist and what you do?
Sure. So my name's Franki. I'm an audiologist and I sort of work as the in-house expert at RNID. But an audiologist is a healthcare professional, so who specialises in the diagnosis and management of hearing and balance disorders. So for many audiologists, day-to-day work includes diagnosing hearing loss and helping patients to manage the effects of hearing loss, but also tinnitus and balance disorders as well. and I sort of take that experience. So I used to work as an NHS audiologist, and I'm now kind of using that knowledge at RNID.
Fantastic. And tell us a little bit about RNID and the kind of work that they do.
So we're the UK charity supporting people who are deaf, have hearing loss or tinnitus. And so with our communities, we want to change society to make it more inclusive for everyone. Also help people hear better now, and we also fund world-class research to silence tinnitus and prevent hearing loss.
Do you receive any support from the government? And that's probably a really stupid question, but...
No, it's a good question. So no, all of our research is kind of donation funded. That's probably not the right term. I'll find the right term, sorry. I know this is being recorded, so... but no, we don't receive government funding as such. Hold on. Let me say that again.
Don't worry if you can't find the correct phrasing.
I can't find the right word.
That's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
We get the gist. The government really don't put any support in there for this kind of research and support. So let's talk a bit about what tinnitus is and what it isn't, if you don't mind, please.
Yeah, sure. So tinnitus is the name for when you hear a sound that's not caused by an outside source. So some people describe it as ringing in the ears, but it can be any kind of number of sounds as well. So some people say it sounds like buzzing or humming or whistling, but it's where you hear a sound but it's not caused by something external.
What is hyper... forgive me if I pronounce this wrong, but I know I'm going to. What is hyperacusis?
Perfect pronunciation.
Oh, thank you.
Hyperacusis is where you're kind of abnormally sensitive to normal or everyday sounds. And some people with tinnitus also experience hyperacusis as well. And this is where you kind of find these sounds uncomfortable or even painful in some cases. It can sometimes be confused with something called misophonia, and I know this has got like a fair amount of attention. I see kind of articles about it every time online, and this is slightly different. It sounds very similar, but misophonia is where you kind of really dislike certain sounds. So some people really don't like the sound of chewing or eating noises, but with misophonia it doesn't cause physical discomfort, whereas with hyperacusis you get this kind of physical discomfort or even pain. So that's what hyperacusis is.
So you say it's sort of like so there's a wide range of sounds to pick, because people always say, oh, it's ringing in the ears, but you're saying that there's quite a wide range of different sounds that people experience. Do you know why there's different sounds?
That's a really great question, and I'm not sure we really kind of know why it's such an individual experience. Basically, tinnitus can sound like any number of things, and it really depends on the individual. So, as I said, it's often called ringing, but it can sound like lots of different things. Some people even hear kind of clips of song as well. But it can also kind of sound like it's in your ears, but it can also sound like it's kind of more in your head. It can be in one ear or both ears. It can come and go as well, so it might not be there all the time. But it can also kind of feel different. So some people feel it's quite loud, but some people feel it's really, really quiet and not really noticeable. So basically, it's different for everyone, and we're not really sure why. And this, so with research into tinnitus, at the moment, unfortunately, there's no kind of medical cure, and a part of the reason is because it's such an individual experience for everyone. It's difficult to kind of do research on this population because everybody kind of experiences it so differently.
And now another, is it loud music that can cause tinnitus? Because that's a real bone of contention amongst particular rock musicians.
Yeah, so any loud sound can cause tinnitus, hearing loss as well, and even hyperacusis. And this does include loud music. And this can be either live music or loud music through headphones as well.
Right.
So the important thing is to remember it's not just the volume of the sound. Obviously, if you listen to a really loud sound, then it's likely to cause some tinnitus or hearing loss, but also the length of time that you're exposed to it is really important as well. So, for example, the level at which you start to risk damage to your hearing or like causing tinnitus is around 85 decibels.
Really?
So this is about, it's quite low. And that's, for context, that's about the same as a food blender. And you can be exposed to this for around 8 hours a day. So it's quite a long time. But as sound level increases, so for every 3 decibels, this kind of safe exposure time halves. So by the time you get to 100 decibels, you can only really safely be exposed to it for about 15 minutes a day. Yes, so it's really not very long. And when you think about live venues, most are around 100 to 110, maybe slightly more. So you can only really be in these spaces for a matter of minutes, really, before you start to risk causing damage to your hearing or risk causing tinnitus. And this is probably an experience that a lot of your listeners might have, but lots of people who've been to a live venue might notice the next day that they're not hearing so well, or they've got a bit of tinnitus, and it might go away. I mean, I've experienced it as well, but this is actually a warning sign. So when you've been somewhere that's too loud, you might get this the next day, and a lot of the time it goes away. But if you go to these places regularly and you're doing this, quite frequently, this can build up to the point where it's permanent.
I know when people talk about ear protection and things like that, you get a lot of people that say, "Oh, you're a killjoy. I'm not really experiencing," but it sounds to me as if it's something we really should think about.
Yes, and I can completely appreciate the kind of the fact that you don't necessarily want to miss out on the experience if you're wearing hearing protection. The important thing to remember is that things are improving a lot, and so you shouldn't stop doing things you enjoy. But you should also be aware of the risks and the steps you can take to reduce it. So there's lots of different types of hearing protection, and there are some really some good ones for when you go to live venues. So you've got the big headphone style ear defenders. These are only really useful when you want to block out all harmful noise. So if you work somewhere noisy, if you're using a jackhammer, that's where you need to wear those. Not really great in a live venue. There's also the kind of disposable foam earplugs, and these are effective at blocking out harmful sound, but they can make everything seem a bit dull. So again, it's not really probably what you want to be wearing, only if you've got no other choice. But these days we've got reusable earplugs that have like special filters in, and these reduce harmful sounds but don't compromise on sound quality. So these are kind of ideal for these live venues, especially if you go all the time. So because you can go and enjoy it and actually hear the act, see. So I've got a pair of these. They're relatively inexpensive, off the shelf. You can there's loads of options online. You can also get custom-made ones, which are probably a little bit more expensive, but potentially something to consider if you go regularly.
Yeah. So it sounds as if then it's an important thing for people to really consider, and musicians as well. I mean, for some of us of a certain age, hearing has already been damaged quite badly over the years, and it's the younger musicians that are more savvy now and going, "I'm not going deaf, thank you very much." You say that there's no cure, but are there any sort of techniques or any technologies that people can try and minimise the kind of stressful situation of tinnitus?
Yes, absolutely. So unfortunately, while we don't have a medical cure, we do have loads of strategies to manage it. And the great thing is that most people do find ways to manage it without needing kind of formal help as well. there are a number of different things you can do, and it might take a little bit of time to kind of find the right thing for you if you've got tinnitus. So as you know, as I say, everyone experiences it differently, so everyone is likely to find a different way to help them. But so for people that may need a little bit more support, so if you're finding it quite stressful, if you're concerned about it, go and see your GP, and they can refer you to an audiologist or an ENT specialist, and they can kind of go through the recommended ways to manage it at the moment. And these could include talking therapies, so things like cognitive behavioural therapy are recommended at the moment, because it can kind of change how you think about or react to your tinnitus, so it's not as kind of intrusive as it might be. You can also try something called sound therapy. And this involves using kind of sounds that you like to listen to. So it could be, you know, some people like white noise, some people like kind of the sound of raindrops, that kind of, those kind of nice sounds, a constant low level sound, which can just help you distract yourself from the tinnitus as well. If you've got hearing loss as well, it's worth getting your hearing tested and considering trying hearing aids, because these can be really helpful. So in my time as an audiologist, you often see people with tinnitus often have a bit of hearing loss as well. And if you try hearing aids, you hear the sounds that you're kind of meant to hear, and this can help distract you from the tinnitus. It's really amazing sometimes. I remember a few occasions where you turn the hearing aids on, and the person would say, "Oh, my tinnitus is gone. I can't hear it anymore." So it's worth considering it if you've not taken that step yet. But you know, at home as well, you can also people also find things like mindfulness or relaxation exercises or deep breathing. Those can be really, really helpful as well.
So there are ways around sort of easing the symptoms. Does it get worse over time?
So fortunately for most people, if you're not, it does kind of. They do find. Sorry, let me start that again. I kind of stuttered a bit. Okay, right. So for most people, they do find effective ways to manage their tinnitus, and generally things actually get better over time if you've got the right support.
That's good news.
And also if you protect your hearing as well. So there's a combination of things that you probably need to do, but it is really good news for a lot of people. It does get better, or you find the right way to manage it. If you're finding that it's not getting better, if you're still really, really concerned about it, as I say, go and see your GP, or and they can refer you on for additional support as well.
So there's no reason why people can't try and find a way of dealing with it.
Yeah, absolutely. You're not alone.
So the GP is a first port of call, really, isn't it? To get yourself checked out and.
Generally, especially if you're concerned as well.
Yeah. Are there like self-help groups or support groups, or someone can get in contact with of like-minded people who are fellow sufferers, and so they can talk it through?
Yeah, so there are lots of support groups across the country, and they are really, really helpful, especially for people, as you say, to find someone that's like-minded and to talk about your experience. People find them really, really helpful. So an organisation called Tinnitus UK, they've got a network of support groups, and RNID actually have some support groups within this network. So they'll be able to, there's a kind of a directory that if you are interested in finding a support group, that's a good place to look.
Fantastic. We'll of course put links to these so people can go on there and get help and support, and links to you, of course. Well, thank you so much, Franki. You've been really informative, and you've answered a lot of key questions that I know a lot of musicians and a lot of particularly rock music fans have wanted to know for a long time. So thank you so much, Franki, for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye. Nice to meet you.
That was good.
That's a good one, that.